So a few days ago, this video went viral of two band members of Jane's Addiction getting into a fight on stage. Now, the band's announced they're canceling the rest of the reunion tour. Today on the podcast, Jane's Addiction and the fraught emotions of reunion tours. I'm Elamin Abdul-Mahmoud. This is Commotion. Look, if you're a fan of the legendary band Jane's Addiction, I think you've come at this point to expect a certain amount of drama. Like, this is a band that has broken up and reunited and broken up and reunited so many times over the last 30 years or so. But until last Friday, we'd never actually seen the band fall apart in real time. You hear it, right? You hear the song, and then you just hear just the bumps and bumps and bumps, and that's a fight. That's what that sounds like. That is the sound of Jane's Addiction on stage last Friday in Boston. They're finishing the song, and then singer Perry Farrell starts shouting at guitarist Dave Navarro, and then throws a punch at him. And then Perry is sort of wrestled off stage by a number of people. The band has since scrapped the rest of its North American tour. We should say that includes a show that was supposed to happen tomorrow night in Toronto. Perry Farrell has since apologized to Dave and his bandmates in a statement posted to Instagram. He said, "Unfortunately, my breaking point resulted in inexcusable behavior, and I take full accountability for how I chose to handle the situation." So what happened here? And more importantly, why did it happen? Suzy Exposito is here. Maura Johnston is here. We're going to try to figure this out. Welcome to the show, y'all. How's it going?
Hello. Going great.
Hello. We're not going to fight. None of us are going to fight the same way.
No punches.
That's not going to be a thing
fighting.
that happens. But Suzy, maybe I'll start with you. Set the scene for us. What do we know about what happened at the Jane's Addiction show in Boston last week?
So the band, they were playing the song Ocean Size, and I guess, Perry Farrell got heated. I don't know. He waited until the end of the song to start to shoulder check Dave Navarro.
Yeah.
And like you said, this is not the first time that the band has had a conflict. They've broken up many times over the years, but they've never quite had a meltdown at a show like this before. The bassist, Eric Avery, jumped in. At first, you were thinking, okay, he's going to break up the fight, but he got involved in the tussle. And now we don't know if they're going to go back on tour again.
No.
Sorry, fans.
Well, especially because this is original lineup Jane's Addiction. That's not a thing that happens very often. And so when you get that and then you get this kind of end to it, it's disappointment is not even the word for it. Maybe Suzy, you want to just explain a little bit about the morning after the incident. Perry Farrell's wife posted this explanation. What was her take on how things went down? Do you want to just give that explanation?
Yes. So his wife, Eddie Lau, she said on Instagram that her husband was distressed by the fact that his voice was getting drowned out by the band. As a former lead singer, I can tell you that happens a lot and it's not fun. But she also said that he's been suffering from tinnitus and a sore throat. And she said that the band started the song without Farrell and, he got upset. No one could hear him. Allegedly, fans were telling him they couldn't hear him. So he just had this outburst and has since apologized. But, it's looking a little dicey when it comes to whether the band is going to continue at all. They've fully canceled their tour. They all made announcements on Instagram, and the remaining band members, Navarro, Avery, and the drummer Stephen Perkins, they all issued a separate statement citing Perry's mental health difficulties.
Yeah.
So they're not exactly.
It's quite a different story.
It's a very different story, and they're attributing it to mental health.
Yeah. And also taking the unusual step of, making a statement together separately from the band's official sort of account. All the band members, aside from Perry, sort of got together and they made that statement and they said, there's been this continuing pattern of behavior and they're worried about these mental health difficulties. So it's quite insight into this whole thing. Maura, I want to talk about how Jane's Addiction was one of those pioneers of alternative rock in the late '80s, but then they break up right after 3 records in 1991, and then since 1991 they reunite and they disband and they reunite and they disband so many times. How do you describe the interpersonal dynamics within this band over the years, and how did that lead us to what we saw on Friday?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that their whole thing has been very combustible since the beginning. They've always kind of dwelled on the edge. Certainly, in the 80s and 90s, they were controversial for using very sort of blatant imagery of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I feel like this tour was the first by the prime lineup in years. Eric Avery had rejoined the band in 2022. Dave Navarro had long COVID, so he wasn't on the road for the tour with Smashing Pumpkins back then, and he just rejoined the band.
Yeah.
And I feel like, they were always very chaotic, but that chaos was what made those, especially Nothing Shocking and Ritual de la Perpetual, so incredible. It always felt like they were just about to drive off a cliff with some of their songs. And I feel like that kind of energy there's a byproduct of tension no matter what. Farrell and Navarro, they're not like the toxic twins. They're not like Nick and Nick, have to rep for Boston, sorry. But they were probably like the prime combustible frontman guitarist duo of that era.
Yeah.
And I feel like, reunion tours in general, I mean, obviously they're more prevalent now because, as one of the Gallaghers said recently, nobody's making any money from recorded music. So, reunion tours are a lot more of a reliable source of income, but they do have the tendency to open wounds and to remind people of, maybe the good times, the great songs, but also the fights, the bad times.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say, I didn't go to this show on Friday, but I did go to the show that they played when they were co-headlining with Smashing Pumpkins 2 years ago. And, they obviously Navarro wasn't in the band, but the band did sound good, but Perry did sound a little ragged. And I feel like also, that's the thing, his vocal style is so intense.
Yeah.
It's like, there's
no,
there are softer moments, but his wail, I almost said yawp and wail is one word, but you know what I mean? That was so crucial to sort of driving this really heavy funk influenced complex music.
But Maura, you're pre-anticipating me a little bit in terms of mentioning the Gallaghers, one of the Gallaghers, and talking about sort of the Oasis reunion tour.
Can't get him off my mind.
And we'll get there in just a moment. But I just kind of want to talk about the reception to this moment, Maura, because I think something has been kind of surprising me about it. Watching this whole thing go down, I kind of go this feels a little bit related to actually unrelated news, right? Which is the news about Dave Grohl fathering a child out of wedlock, which kind of went viral last week.
Yeah.
And it's been this week where people are having big reactions to, I guess, news stories that I would have thought would be sort of part and parcel of what we imagined rock and roll to be. So to me, the idea that that this is big news and people are really disappointed in Perry Farrell, I'm he's just acting like a rock star. The Dave Grohl story, I'm that feels like what we normally expect out of rock stars. So I can't help but think that behavior that is now not tolerated, maybe 30 years ago, it would have been mythologized. It would have been that is just what rock stars do. Has something shifted in our perception of rock star, do you think?
I would absolutely say yes. I mean, I teach at Boston College, and we were talking last week about, controversies in pop, and the students were really angry about Grohl, because the Grohl news had broken the day before. Yeah. And I thought that was really surprising because,
they were
but
angry
at the same time,
but the news that he had he announced
that he had cheated on his wife and that he had sort of damaged his, rock and roll dad.
Okay.
Image, but I feel like the standards are different, and I feel like there's a lot of stuff. I mean, look at the Diddy arrest last night, that I think also plays into it, where it's these behaviors were lionized by a culture that just doesn't exist anymore, and that has moved on past deifying these men who behave badly and really thinking about the people who are affected by this. Also, I think with the Janes thing, social media really helped that, because I saw a tweet that night, from a musician here in Boston, Hassan Barclay, and he was I think I just saw Jane's Addiction break up, and I was that's weird. And
Yeah.
then the videos and everything started coming in, you know? So I think that that also feeds into any kind of incident that might happen in a tour stop as opposed to
Right.
like, you know, in a profile or something or in a statement.
But yeah, Suzy,
Yeah.
help me out here. Like having a kid outside of your marriage and fighting with your band members, again, you would say that's every band in the '80s. It would say like you get that on a regular
Yeah.
Tuesday. But it sort of feels like maybe our moral expectations of what a rock star should behave like have changed in the moment of the internet.
Yeah, and I think that also like millennials and Gen Z, we just like, I don't know, expect a little bit more of our public figures, but it's like I never expected Dave Grohl to be the paragon of morality. I never would expect Jane's Addiction to be a paragon of morality. Have you listened to their music? Like,
Have you seen The Gift?
have you seen The Gift?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think especially with Dave Grohl, I think becoming America's dad in a way. But that is also a persona that he has put out there.
He has.
So
He's embraced
I think
it.
that, you know, like they're all doing yoga now. They're all going to therapy. It is a different time.
Yeah.
But I also like with Dave Grohl, it's I'm not surprised at all. Also, have you met like very wealthy men?
Right. Right.
But
he's not Santa Claus.
no, nor should he pretend to be at any point. More, I'm going to give you last word to this, and we're going to go back to the Gallagher brothers because that's the rock and roll reunion everybody's anticipating. Oasis were the ones who warned, please don't put your life in the hands of a rock and roll band. And now we are kind of doing that a little bit. Do you think this is a bad omen? This sort of Jane's Addiction breakup, is it a bad omen for the Oasis tour that hasn't even started yet?
Perhaps the karmic energy has moved over to Jane's Addiction. And it was like, we need the balance of the universe. We need another band to start fighting now that the Gallaghers have finally gotten back together. So I don't know. I just hope nothing bad happens at Wembley, you know?
Yeah, hey.
Oh, God.
But that would be kind of an amazing flame out, though, if you think about it.
No, I don't disagree.
Epic.
I don't disagree with you, but also like there's that joke going around regularly that is like, hey, if you bought tickets for any show that isn't the first show of the Oasis reunion tour, I hope you got some ticket insurance. And that's like one joke that I'm like, I actually kind of believe that to be a real thing a little bit. Maura and Suzy, I got to leave it there, but I really appreciate you guys being here. Thank you for your time again.
Thanks for having us.
Of course, anytime. Maura Johnston is a freelance music journalist in Boston, and Suzy Exposito is a freelance music journalist in Los Angeles. I'm Elamin Abdul-Mahmoud. This is Commotion. If you don't mind, I'm going to take you back to last month's Olympic Games in Paris when this happened.
Round one goes to Phil Wizard. Round two goes to Phil Wizard. And he is the first B-boy with a gold medal.
The Olympic title to Philip Kim of Canada. Say it with us. Olympic champion Phil Wizard, the winner of the gold medal battle.
That was the moment. That was the moment that Canada's own Phil Wizard became the first B-boy to win gold at breaking's gigantic big Olympics debut. It was a really big moment. But the thing is, it was overshadowed. It was overshadowed by the circus around one particular Olympic breaker, Australia's Rachel Gunn, aka Raygun, who got 0 points from the judges, but received this overwhelming online backlash. Some people felt that her performance made a mockery of the sport, and others claimed that, you know, since she's an academic who studied breaking and she's white, she took up space at a culturally significant moment for this profession. And then last week, an announcement that surprised a lot of people. We learned that Raygun is still, wait for it, the top-ranked breaker in the world. Richard Conlon, aka Crazy Legs, has a lot to say about this. He was one of the original b-boys who brought breaking from its beginnings in the Bronx, New York, to a global stage in the 80s. He's currently the head of the legendary Rocksteady crew. Crazy Legs, good to have you on the show with us, man. How's it going?
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Earlier, you're like, nobody calls me Richard, don't do it. So I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to call you Crazy Legs for the rest of the conversation.
And the last name is actually Colon.
Okay.
So that there's an accent over the second O.
I'm learning. Colon. Thank you. Let me start by bringing back the conversation to this historic moment
Yes.
that breaking had at the Olympics. You know, Raygun controversy aside for just a moment, what did you love about seeing breaking on the stage at the Olympics?
The good thing is where I come from. Well, not the good thing, but one of the things from about where I come from is that we came up during desperate times in the '70s. So unwittingly, we got involved or created amongst each other an art form.
Yeah.
You know, from our desperate situation, and to see that art form be on the world stage at, many years later is a testament to our resilience as a people, Black and brown people who struggled. And it is a feel good moment. We did watch it in the Bronx, gathered together, a lot of the people from the community, and took a lot of pride in saying, wow, that came from our situation. And look at it now.
That's really beautiful. That's a really beautiful way to sort of conceptualize of the debut of the sport and all the people sort of waiting for it to get there. And you get there. You get there, and then there's this sort of weird surrounding circus that is probably a little bit annoying to talk about at this point. So we're talking about Raygun again because this governing body has ranked her #1 in the world. It is being described as a technicality, I should say, where it sounds like athletes are judged on a handful of their best performances over the last year, but Olympic events like the one that Raygun had that we all watched does not count towards that count. For a lot of people, this sounds a little absurd, so I just want to get you to put on your b-boy judge hat right now. Tell me, how would you rate Raygun's performance at the Olympics?
Oh, trash, straight trash.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah,
Get into it.
and I say that I say that only because I come from that kind of background where, as a b-boy or b-girl, if you were subpar, you were given some harsh, blunt criticism. But because of where we came from, we were a lot more tough, and we could accept that kind of criticism, go back into the lab, come back a week later, come back a little better. And those same dudes who told you you were trash a week before are now giving you a pat on your back and saying, yo, keep it up.
Yeah.
And that was very inspiring. It's the unfortunate thing is that her performance was trash.
Listen, very few people knew what to do with that performance. The explanation that Raygun herself gave to what that performance was like is she said, look, I was competing with people who are much younger than me, who are much more sort of stylistically advanced than me. And so I tried to do something that was like a little bit comedic, a little bit of sort of a stylistic take on breaking. What do you make when you hear that explanation? What does that sound like to you?
When it comes to things like style and flavor, either you have it or you don't. You can't fake it. You cannot fake flavor. You cannot learn flavor. A lot of that is based on your upbringing, how your day was, what your relationship with your family is. A lot of times, because of breaking allows you to be all about your character, you could come in with that same attitude, but you still better put that attitude across with style, flavor, and finesse, or else you're just going to look like someone who's mechanically doing moves, and you could just be doing those moves to any kind of music in any setting. And when you're talking about being comedic and trying to say you're expressing a style, I mean, all you did was imitate a kangaroo. You did it. I mean, if a true b-boy or b-girl would have found some way to make that so dope and so flavor, people would have gotten the reference. Like, whoa, that was dope. But in this case, it was just like, are we in an acting class? Are you really trying to, is this an exercise? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And she really believes that she was doing something. And, when we're talking about being ranked, first of all, we don't even rank the WDSF as anyone to rank anyone else. Like the
body that ranked her.
Yeah, the WDSF is not even ranked when it comes to b-boys and b-girls in terms of their ability to do a good job on this.
Okay, so I'm glad that you brought that up, because there's something to be said about what happens when a dance or an art form that originated organically begins to sort of develop all of these sort of like organizing bodies that try to sort of give it, you know, some credibility. And then there's sort of a fight over like who gets what credibility. Some of the reactions to Raygun have been fair. Some of them have been pretty toxic. But the big question that you and others had was less focused on her performance and less focused on any of that and more on just like, how did she qualify for the Olympics in the first place? Can you talk a little bit about why that focus on the qualification process is important?
All right, so when you're looking at, all right, look, 4 years ago, when they asked my opinion, I said, look, you got to have a good criteria. You have to have a good judging system. You have to have a great ambassadorship program that leads into the kinds of communities where Black and brown people exist, and you find the best talent. You know, also have respect for the industry. So when we're talking about those situations being implemented, you get to a point where a ray gun doesn't even show up on the radar because they have created a level playing field for people who are less fortunate. You know, within I think Australia, you had to join 3 different organizations, be able to make it to like 1 or 2, you know, buy flights, you know, to these qualifiers.
Events. Yeah.
And also, you know, make sure you had money for a passport. And there are a lot of people who are the best talent in the world globally who just don't have the resources. So what did they really do to make sure that the best talent that Australia has to offer was, you know, was going to be able to be present in these qualifiers? And who are the judges? Like, I don't know. I really don't know.
I think like for folks who are listening on the radio, I should just explain the incredulous faces that Crazy Legs is making as you sort of, you know, asking these questions. Like you're like, who are the judges? How did we get here? You know, there's sort of a frustration that's very palpable in your face. I just want to sort of communicate to people who are listening. My name is Elamin Abdul Mahmoud, and this is Commotion, and we're talking about Raygun again because a governing body just said she's still the #1 female breakdancer in the world. B-Boy Crazy Legs is here. I want to play you a clip, Crazy Legs. I want to play you this clip of Raygun. She did this interview with the Australian TV program, The Project. She apologized to the Australian breaking community and because for the backlash. And, you know, in the same interview, she was asked this question by the host.
Do you genuinely think you are the best female breaker in Australia?
Well, I think my record speaks to that. You know, I was the top-ranked Australian B-girl in 2020 and 2022 and 2023. I've been invited to represent at how many world championships, Paris, Korea, you know, so the record is there, but anything can happen in a battle.
Crazy Legs, what do you make of Raygun's answer there?
She is apologizing to all the wrong people and situations. If you're talking about something that comes from a people who are struggling within culture and create something and dealing, you know, out of a socioeconomic devastation. And this is something that came from our lives that meant so much to us because we had nothing. You have now stepped into a realm of this is beyond dance. Recognize that you have insulted people of color who are walking around feeling really hurt. Like, yo, what happened? Like, yo, how could that happen? Your legs. Help us understand, because this meant so much to us as children. You have to remember the ages that we were. We were 10 years old, 11 years old, you know, young people who later on realized that, hey, wow, that was amazing. And we're so lucky we had that tool to choose from so that we can engage with something that was creative and keep us out of the streets a little bit more. And so her again, at this point, she's delusional, and whoever ranked her is delusional, and whoever invited her to any kind of world competition where you have top tier quality of B-boys and B-girls, I don't know how that could possibly happen. And, you know, and it's just questionable. Who are the gatekeepers? Who's making sure that there's quality control? Who's making sure that a mockery isn't being made of the culture? There's a lot going on where you have to wonder, did people sell out to be in position to make these decisions and just be yes men and yes women? during this whole process.
I think Crazy Legs, that's a good place to leave it. I really appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much for being here to shed light on this. Thanks for your time.
I appreciate it.
Of course, anytime. Crazy Legs is a pioneering b-boy and the president of the Rocksteady crew. He spoke to me from New York. You can catch Crazy Legs along with a slew of other rap legends at the Puerto Rico Rocksteady Festival on October 12th. That is it for the podcast today. If you're listening on this show on podcast, don't forget to give us a follow. You can find us on YouTube or on Instagram at Commotion CBC. My name is Elamin Abdul Mahmoud. This show is called Commotion. See you tomorrow.